Doug Flynn is with us to analyze all this, certified financial planner and co-founder of Flynn Capital Management. You know, I mentioned gas prices. Let's go there first because I want to spend some time on the mortgages because I know you and I in this segment have talked a lot about that. It's important to a lot of people. So anything, gas comes down and obviously helps the consumer. What do you expect it to do from here?
Yeah, I mean, we say as the leaves fall, the gas prices fall, and that typically is a common occurrence. And usually you get about 30 to 40 cents. The average is off about 30 cents. So this is kind of normal. Even though you've had an increase in demand and a decrease in supply, so maybe it would have come down a little bit more. So it is very possible that things could come down if we just remain relatively flat with the current pricing of oil and the current demand. But if that wanes, then maybe you get a little bit of lower prices, but maybe a little bit lower from here. And then we'll see what happens. There's a lot going on in the world, as you know, especially in the oil regions of the world. So
that's putting it mildly, right? Let me talk about the mortgages because, I say you and I have talked about interest rates in general and how that is something that all kind of, just regular people are dealing with cars and houses. On mortgages, years ago, these adjustable rate mortgages, as opposed to getting, a 30-year fixed mortgage when you buy your house, they were very popular for a time. And then, after everything we went through in the economy, it became the opposite of popular. Everybody wanted to have a 30-year fixed. Rates were low. You could lock them in for 30 years. But now if you look at the numbers this morning, that's where the demand was on the adjustable rate mortgages. What do you say about that?
Yeah, they're up to about 10% of the mortgage applications right now, and that's increasing. And it's primarily because the real difference is the most common adjustable rate mortgage is the 5-in-1 arm, they call it, which means it's fixed for 5 years and then it floats once a year to whatever the current rates are. And that current mortgage is almost 1 full percentage point less than a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So let's call it, 7% instead of 8% right now on average. And the thing you have to be very careful about is that most people end up staying in their house a little bit longer than they intended. So even if you think you're going to stay in there for 3 or 4 years, you might end up on the other side of that staying 6 to 8. And here's what happens. If you're saving 1% per year for those 5 years versus the current fixed, which is great, you're sort of banking that 5%, but then you might get hit with those renewals on the other side every year.
Right.
Now, the max they typically go up is 2% a year, but you have to think if the worst thing happens and everybody's wrong and rates are up and housing is down and you can't get out, your break even there is about 7.5 years. So if you end up staying there for 10 years, you can end up with a loser. And that's the thing you have to be careful about is, for the short term. Go ahead.
So what's the biography, of a person that would come into your office that you would say this is worth the risk? Those are the risks of doing it. It's just someone who's keeping track. But if someone came in and asked you about it, who would you actually advise take a mortgage like that?
So if you're intent on flipping the house, if you're not keeping it and you need that's perhaps something, then you might even go to a shorter term one like a 3-1 because you're not intending to stay there. But I always think you have to think worst case scenario in your planning. And a lot of times you have risk. You have risk with your job, risk with your paycheck, risk with your investments. Do you want to risk your house too? And so, normally you'd want to stick with a fixed. Rates are high. I get it. You'll save a little bit of money. But here's a good way to look at it. If you can afford the fixed rate and choose to do the adjustable and put that money away as if you had it, then you're probably in pretty good shape. The problem comes in if the only way you can afford the house is by taking the adjustable. That's what can get you into trouble down the road if everything doesn't go your way, and sometimes that happens.
Lessons learned the hard way so many years ago from so many people, but important conversation now because I think a lot of people are thinking about this in their own kind of lives, and the numbers were just out today. Thank you, Doug. As always, we'll talk to you again soon. Doug Flynn.